I'm standing in my own living room, watching my daughter-in-law Crystal measure my windows for new curtains while her mother Diane examines paint samples on my walls. Crystal turns to me with that sweet smile that doesn't reach her eyes and says I need to pack my bags and leave within 48 hours. My son Brandon stands by the doorway, staring at his shoes. They have no idea this house is still in my name. When Brandon got married 6 months ago, I never corrected them when they assumed he owned it. That secret is about to save my life. Let me take you back to where this all started, because you need to understand how I got here. It was a Tuesday evening in March when Brandon came over for dinner, practically bouncing with excitement. My son has always been an open book, wearing his heart right there on his sleeve, so I knew something big was coming before he even sat down at the kitchen table. "Mom, I have incredible news," he said, his face glowing. "I'm getting married." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Brandon had only been dating Crystal for 4 months. 4 months. I'd met her exactly 3 times, all brief encounters where she seemed pleasant enough but never quite warm. She had this way of looking around rooms like she was taking inventory. You know what I mean? But I pushed that thought away because my son was happy. And isn't that what every mother wants? "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, putting down my fork and reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "Tell me everything." He did. They'd met at a coffee shop where Crystal worked as a manager. She was 28, he was 32. She loved hiking and old movies and wanted 3 kids someday. On paper, it all sounded perfect. But that little voice in my head, the one that's kept me safe for 65 years, whispered that something wasn't quite right about the timeline. "We're thinking a September wedding," Brandon continued. "Small, just family and close friends. And Mom, I wanted to ask you something. Anything, honey. Crystal and I want to save money for our future. Maybe buy our own place in a few years. Would it be okay if we moved in here after the wedding? Just temporarily, until we're on our feet." I looked around my kitchen. This house my late husband Thomas and I bought 30 years ago. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a big backyard with Thomas' old workshop still standing in the corner. The neighborhood had grown up around us, property values climbing year after year. Last assessment put it at just over $600,000. It was more space than I needed, honestly, rattling around in here alone since Thomas passed 5 years back. "Of course you can," I told Brandon. "This is your home too. Always has been." His relief was palpable. "Thank you, Mom. Crystal will be so happy. She really wants us to have a strong financial foundation." 2 weeks later, I met Crystal's mother Diane at a pre-wedding dinner at a nice Italian place downtown. Brandon had made the reservation, wanting our families to get to know each other. Diane arrived in a sharp business suit, her blonde hair styled perfectly, and shook my hand with a grip that felt more like an assessment than a greeting. "So you're the famous Margie," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Crystal tells me you have that beautiful colonial on Maple Street." "I do," I said. "It's been my home for 3 decades. "Must be worth quite a bit now," Diane continued, and something in her tone made my spine straighten. "That's such a desirable area. All those tech companies moving in nearby, driving up values." "I suppose so," I said carefully. "I don't think much about selling. It's my home." Crystal arrived then, apologizing for being late, and the conversation shifted, but I noticed how Diane's eyes kept calculating, how she steered the discussion back to the house twice more during dinner. She asked about the school district, the square footage, whether I had any plans to downsize. "Brandon mentioned you might be thinking about a smaller place eventually," Diane said over dessert. "You know, something more manageable. Senior living communities have come such a long way." "I'm quite comfortable where I am," I replied, keeping my voice pleasant but firm. Brandon looked uncomfortable, shooting me an apologetic glance. Crystal patted my hand and said, "Of course you are. Diane just worries. She's always thinking ahead." That night, lying in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that Diane had been appraising my house like a real estate investor, not a future in-law. And here's where I made the decision that would change everything. The next morning, I called my attorney, Harold Bennett. Wed worked together when Thomas died, settling the estate. Everything had been left to me, clean and simple. The house, the savings, the small life insurance policy, all in my name. Harold, I need to ask you something, I said. If Brandon gets married and he and his wife move in with me, what are my legal protections regarding the property? Harold was quiet for a moment. Margie, are you concerned about something? Just being cautious, I said. Call it a mother's intuition. He outlined everything for me. As sole owner, I had complete control. No one could force me to sell or transfer the deed. If I wanted extra protection, I could put additional safeguards in place, maybe set up a trust. But the bottom line was clear. My name on the deed meant my house, my rules. One more thing, I added. If people assume Brandon co-owns the house and I don't correct them, is that a problem, legally? No. You're not required to disclose ownership details to anyone. Why do you ask? Just exploring options, I said. When Brandon brought Crystal over the following Sunday to look at the house and discuss living arrangements, something interesting happened. Crystal walked through every room, Diane trailing behind her, and I heard Diane say, "This is perfect. You and Brandon will have plenty of space to grow into. Not you and Brandon and Margie, just you and Brandon." Later, in the kitchen, Crystal asked, "So when Brandon takes over the house eventually, what are your plans, Margie?" I could have corrected her right then, could have said, "Actually, the house is mine, and will remain mine." But that little voice spoke up again, and instead I just smiled and said, "Oh, I'm not planning to go anywhere anytime soon." Crystal laughed, a little too brightly. "Of course not. I just meant, down the road, when you're ready for something smaller." Brandon was in the backyard, looking at his dad's old workshop, so he missed this exchange. When I walked him to his car later, I said, "Brandon, honey, I want you to do me a favor. Don't discuss the house ownership with Crystal right now. I don't want any awkwardness about money before the wedding. Can you just let it be our business?" He looked confused but nodded. "Sure, Mom, if that's what you want. She knows you own it though." "Right. Let's just keep things simple," I said. "It's your home. That's all that matters." What I didn't tell him was that I'd overheard something else that afternoon. Crystal and Diane had stepped onto the back porch while I was in the powder room down the hall. The window was open, and their voices carried. "Once they're married and settled here, you can start working on her," Diane was saying. "Older people get tired of home maintenance. They want to simplify. You plant those seeds. Make her think a retirement community would be easier. And if she doesn't want to move?" Crystal asked. "Then Brandon can encourage her to sign the house over to him. Either way, in a few years, this property is yours to do with as you please." My hands shook as I washed them at the sink. They were already planning to push me out of my own home. And they thought Brandon owned it, or would own it, which meant they thought they could control it through him. That was when I knew my instinct to stay quiet about the deed was right. That little secret was going to be my insurance policy. The wedding came in September, a beautiful ceremony in a local botanical garden. I paid for half of it, which came to nearly $8,000. Crystal's family paid the other half. Diane gave a toast about new beginnings and building futures. I smiled and clapped along with everyone else. And I didn't say a word about the house still being solely in my name. Brandon and Crystal moved in the first week of October. Autumn leaves were falling in the backyard, and I'd spent the previous week preparing the master bedroom for them, moving my things into the smaller bedroom down the hall. It felt right to give them the larger space, the one Thomas and I had shared for so many years. They were starting their married life, and I wanted them to feel at home. The first few weeks were actually pleasant. Crystal made breakfast on Sundays. We watched movies together in the evenings, and Brandon seemed happier than I'd seen him in years. I started to think maybe I'd been wrong about Diana's conversation. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe they really did just want to build a life here together, and I was part of that life. Then November arrived, and the temperature in the house seemed to drop along with the weather outside. It started small, Crystal would walk through the living room and say things like, "This wallpaper is so outdated. Floral prints are really aging the space," or, "Shed open the kitchen cabinets and sigh. These are original to the house. Aren't they? So much dark wood. Everything's going toward white and light now." I'd smile and nod, not taking the bait. It was just decorating talk, right? Everyone has opinions about style, but then she started bringing things in. A new couch arrived one Tuesday while I was at my book club. When I came home, my comfortable old sofa was gone, replaced by a modern sectional in cold gray fabric. Crystal was arranging throw pillows when I walked in. "Surprise," she said. "I hope you don't mind. The old couch was really worn, and I got such a good deal on this one. Don't you love it?" Brandon stood behind her, looking uncomfortable. "Mom," Crystal wanted to contribute to the house. "I thought it would be okay." What could I say? "They lived here too. It's very nice," I managed. The next week, new curtains appeared in the dining room. Then Crystal replaced the kitchen table without asking. Each time, Brandon would give me that apologetic look, but he never stopped her. He was caught between us, trying to keep peace, and choosing his wife over his mother, which, I suppose, is what he should do, but it still stung. Diane started visiting more often, always with suggestions. "You know what this house needs? A complete kitchen remodel. Open concept is everything now." She'd pull out her phone and show me Pinterest boards Crystal had created, full of pristine white kitchens with marble countertops and pendant lighting. "That would cost $40,000 or $50,000. I pointed out. "True," Diane said. "But think of the return on investment. When you eventually sell, you'd make it all back and then some." There was that word again. Eventually. When you sell, as if it were inevitable that I'd be leaving. One evening in late November, I was folding laundry in my bedroom when I heard Crystal on the phone in the master bedroom next door. "The walls in this old house are solid, but sound carries through the heating vents. Phase 1 is working," she was saying. "She already feels like a guest in her own home. Every time we change something, she shrinks a little more. By Christmas, she'll be ready to hear about the retirement community options." My hands stopped moving. I stood there holding one of Brandon's shirts, the fabric wrinkling in my grip. "Diane says we need to be patient," Crystal continued. "But honestly, I don't know how much longer I can play nice. This house is wasted on her. She doesn't even use half the rooms." I sat down on my bed, that shirt still clutched in my hands. So I hadn't misunderstood anything back before the wedding. This was their plan all along. Make me uncomfortable in my own home until I volunteered to leave. The really scary part came a week later. I'd been expecting some mail from my bank, statements that I needed for tax preparation. They never arrived. Then a notice from the county tax assessor's office went missing. I always received that in early December, but it never showed up. I found the envelopes in Crystal's car 3 days later. I'd gone out to my own car to get my grocery bags and saw them sitting on Crystal's passenger seat, opened and read. My bank statements, my tax documents, papers with my name on them that had been delivered to my mailbox. When I confronted her that evening, keeping my voice gentle, Crystal had an explanation ready. "Oh, Margie, I'm so sorry. I've been trying to help organize the household mail. Everything was just piling up on the hall table, and I thought I'd sort through it. I must have accidentally mixed your things with ours. These were opened," I said. "Were they? The mailman must have delivered them that way. You know how rough they are with envelopes sometimes." Brandon believed her. When I tried to explain that this felt like a violation, he said, "Mom, she's trying to help. She's just being efficient. Don't make this into something it's not." But I knew what it was. She was looking for proof of ownership. She was trying to find documentation that would tell her who actually owned this house. That night, I called Harold Bennett again. "I need to put additional protections on my property deed," I told him. "Can we make it so no one can access information about ownership without my explicit permission? We can flag your records at the county office, require in-person verification with ID before releasing any documents," Harold said. "Margie, what's going on?" "Just being careful," I said. "Can we do that this week?" "I'll take care of it tomorrow." The next day, I also opened a post office box and had all my financial mail redirected there. When Crystal asked why mail had stopped coming for me, I told her it'd gone paperless with everything. She smiled, but her eyes were sharp with frustration. December arrived cold and bitter. Crystal's comments about the house became more frequent, more pointed. "Brandon, don't you think your mother would be happier in a place where she didn't have to worry about snow removal and yard work?" Or, "I saw the cutest senior apartments near the mall. They have activities and everything." Brandon started saying things like, "Mom, maybe she has a point. This house is a lot for one person." As if I were one person. As if they didn't live here too. I was losing my son to his wife's manipulation, watching him transform from my loving boy into someone who saw me as a burden. And I knew, with cold certainty, that things were about to get much worse. The week before Christmas, everything came to a head. I woke up on a Monday morning to find Crystal and Diane at my kitchen table, a laptop open between them and several brochures spread across the surface. Brandon was already at work. It was just the three of us. "Good morning, Margie," Diane said with that bright, professional smile. "We wanted to catch you for a chat." I poured myself coffee, my hands steady even though my heart was racing. "About what?" "About your future," Crystal said. "We've been thinking a lot about what's best for everyone, and we really believe it's time for you to consider other living arrangements." I sat down across from them. "Other living arrangements. Senior living," Diane said, pushing the brochures toward me. "We've researched extensively. There are wonderful facilities in the area. Look at this one, Meadowbrook Senior Community. They have weekly activities, transportation services, maintenance included. You'd have so much less to worry about." I picked up one of the brochures. It showed smiling elderly people playing cards and doing watercolor painting. The apartments were tiny, maybe 500 square feet. "Brandon and I really need space to build our marriage," Crystal added, her voice softening like she was talking to a child. "It's been wonderful having you here, but newlyweds need privacy. We need room to grow into our life together." "This is my house," I said quietly. "And Brandon's," Crystal corrected smoothly. "It's Brandon's house, which makes it our house, and we need you to understand that it's time for a change." "Brandon and I will help you pack," Diane said. "We know this feels overwhelming, but sometimes we need a little push to do what's best for us. You'll love it once you settle in." I looked at these two women, at their matching expressions of false sympathy and real calculation, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. "I need to think about it," I said. "Of course," Crystal said. "Take a few days. But Margie, we need an answer by New Year's. We want you moved by February 1st. That gives you plenty of time." After they left, I sat in that kitchen for an hour, staring at those brochures. They'd already picked out where I was going to live. They'd already decided my future. And they thought they had the right to do it. That night, Brandon came home from work and found me in the living room. He sat down next to me on Crystal's new gray couch and took my hand. "Mom, did Crystal talk to you today?" "She did. And what do you think?" "About Meadowbrook." I looked at my son. At this man I'd raised. And I almost didn't recognize him. "Brandon, whose house is this?" He shifted uncomfortably. "It's ours. It's the family house. But whose name is on the deed?" "Mom, does that really matter? You always said this would be mine someday." "That's what Dad wanted. I said it would be yours someday. Not today. Not now. But you're not using most of it. You're in that small bedroom. You don't even go in Dad's workshop anymore. Crystal and I could really use this space. We want to start a family soon. So you want me to leave?" "I want you to be happy," he said, but he couldn't look at me. "And maybe a smaller place would be easier for you. No stairs, no yard work. Wouldn't that be nice?" "Did Crystal tell you to say this?" "She's helping me see what's practical," he said. "Mom, you're 65. At some point, you're going to need to simplify." 3 days before Christmas, Diane invited herself over for what she called a family meeting. Brandon, Crystal, Diane and I sat in the living room. They'd even made an agenda on the laptop. "We've found a perfect apartment for you at Meadowbrook. Diane began. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 900 square feet. The monthly rent is $1,500, which your Social Security and pension should cover easily. We've also contacted a lawyer, Brandon said, and my blood went cold. About the process of transferring the house deed to my name. It's pretty straightforward. You just need to sign some papers, and we can handle everything else. He pulled out a folder and opened it. Inside were legal documents, deeds of transfer, papers that would sign my house away. You've already been to a lawyer, I said. Without telling me. We didn't want to worry you with the details, Crystal said. We know legal stuff is confusing. This way, it's all ready. You just sign, and then you can focus on your move. I looked at those papers, at my name typed at the bottom of lines marked for signature, and something inside me turned to steel. I need to review these with my own attorney, I said. Crystal's face hardened for just a second before the sweet mask slipped back into place. Of course. But Margie, time is ticking. We really need to get this process started. Why the rush? Because we want to start renovations in March, Diane said. New kitchen, updated bathrooms, refinished floors. It's a big project. We need you settled somewhere else before construction begins. Renovations, I repeated. On Brandon's house, on our house, Crystal corrected. Brandon's and mine. We're married. What's his is mine. That night, I lay in my small bedroom and stared at the ceiling, listening to voices float up through the heating vent from the master bedroom below. I told you she'd be difficult, Crystal was saying. Your mother is more stubborn than we thought. She just needs time, Brandon replied. She's lived here for 30 years. We don't have time. My mother found a buyer who's interested in this property. They'd pay cash, well over asking. We could make $300,000 profit after splitting with your mother. My breath stopped. But we're not selling, Brandon said. We're living here. Crystal laughed, and it was a sound I'd never heard from her before. Cold, calculating, nothing like the sweet voice she used with Brandon during the day. We're living here until the renovations are done and the market peaks. Then we sell. Did you really think I wanted to stay in this outdated house long term? We take the money, buy something modern, and still have cash left over. What about Mom's share? What share? Once you sign those papers and transfer the deed to your name, we wait 6 months and divorce. You get the house in the settlement, I get half its value. Your mother gets whatever we feel generous enough to give her. Silence. Then Brandon's voice, small and confused. You'd divorce me. Oh, baby. I'm sorry. I thought you understood this was always the plan. You're sweet, but you're not exactly ambitious. My mother and I, we're builders. We see opportunities. This house is an opportunity. But I love you. I know you do. That's what made this so easy. I lay there in the dark, listening to my son's heartbreak, listening to the woman he loved reveal that their entire marriage was a con. And I knew I had to act. I wish I could say I confronted them that night. That I marched downstairs and threw Crystal out immediately. But I didn't. Because I needed to be smart about this. I needed proof, documentation, a clear legal standing, so I stayed quiet, and I started building my case. The day after Christmas, I met with Harold Bennett at his office. I told him everything, played him a recording I'd made on my phone of Crystal and Diane's conversation about the senior apartments, showed him the transfer papers Brandon had brought home. These documents are premature and potentially fraudulent, Harold said, studying them. They list Brandon as current co-owner, which is false. If you'd signed these without understanding that you were transferring sole ownership to him, that would be grounds for invalidation based on misrepresentation. What do I do? First, you make it crystal clear that you're the sole owner and you're not going anywhere. Second, if they escalate, you call me immediately. Third, if they try to force you out or forge any documents, you call the police. The police. Elder fraud and property theft are serious crimes, Margie. What they're attempting, especially the daughter-in-law's intention to divorce your son after obtaining the house, constitutes conspiracy to commit fraud. I left his office feeling more prepared, but also more frightened. These people were living in my house. I had to see them every day. and Brandon was so deep under Crystal's spell that I didn't know if I could reach him. The ambush came on a Tuesday in early January. I'd gone grocery shopping, just a normal morning errand. When I pulled into my driveway at 11:30, I saw an unfamiliar car parked on the street. A woman in a business suit was standing on my front porch with Crystal and Diane. I walked up the front steps, grocery bags in hand. "Margie," Crystal said brightly. "This is Susan Fletcher from Premier Realty. We were just giving her a tour." Susan extended her hand. "It's a pleasure. Your daughter-in-law and her mother have told me so much about this property. It's a real gem." "Tour," I said. "Just getting some preliminary assessments," Diane said. "You know, for when the house goes on the market." I looked at Susan. "This house is not for sale." Susan's smile faltered. She looked at Crystal. "I thought you said you were listing in March." "We are," Crystal said firmly. "There's just been some miscommunication." I set my grocery bags down. "There's no miscommunication. This is my house. It's not for sale. You need to leave." Susan gathered her papers quickly, clearly sensing the tension. I should go. You folks sort this out." She hurried to her car. As soon as she pulled away, Diane stepped forward. "Margie, that was incredibly rude. We're trying to help you here. Help me." "Yes, help you transition to the next phase of your life. Help Brandon and Crystal build their future. Help everyone move forward." Crystal crossed her arms. "We've been patient. We've given you time to adjust. But that time is up. Margie, you need to move out. You have 48 hours. The world seemed to tilt. 48 hours. You heard me. 2 days. Brandon and I need to start renovations, and we can't do that with you in the way. We're hiring contractors next week. You need to be gone." "Where's Brandon?" "At work. Where he should be, earning money to support our family." "He knows about this." He agreed. Diane went to her car and returned with a stack of cardboard boxes. She set them at my feet. "Start packing. We're donating most of your old furniture anyway. You won't need much in a one-bedroom apartment." I looked at these women, at their hard eyes and satisfied smiles, and something inside me snapped into place. Not anger, not fear. Clarity. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. Crystal pulled a document from her purse. "Yes, you are. This is an eviction notice. You're a tenant at will, and we're terminating your tenancy. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises." I took the paper. It looked official, with legal language and stamped signatures. But something about it felt wrong. The house my husband died in, the house where I'd raised my son. And I realized they thought they'd won. They thought I was a helpless old woman with no options and no fight left. "I need to make a phone call," I said quietly. Crystal laughed. "Call whoever you want. You're still leaving." I went inside, walked to my bedroom, and closed the door. Then I called Harold Bennett. "Harold, they're trying to evict me. They have a fake eviction notice. They're claiming I'm a tenant. Do not leave that house," he said immediately. "I'm sending you an email right now with documentation of ownership. Print it out. Then call the police non-emergency line and report attempted fraud and elder intimidation." "Harold, my son, is complicit or is being used? Either way, you need to protect yourself first. Do it now, Margie." My hands shook as I printed out the ownership documents Harold sent. Then I called the police. 20 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up to my house. Officer Martinez was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes and a patient demeanor. He listened as Crystal and Diane tried to explain that this was just a family matter, nothing to worry about, everything was being handled internally. "Mom," he said to me, "can you tell me what's happening here?" I handed him the fake eviction notice. "These women are trying to force me out of my own home using forged legal documents." "This is not forged," Diane protested. "I'm a paralegal. I know how to file proper paperwork." Officer Martinez examined the document. "This isn't filed with any court. There's no case number, no judge's signature. Where did you get this?" Diane's face paled slightly. "It's a preliminary notice. The official filing comes later." That's not how evictions work in this state. He turned to me. Do you own this property? I handed him my deed, my driver's license, and the documentation Harold had sent. He reviewed everything carefully. Mrs. Sullivan is the sole owner of this property, he said to Crystal and Diane. She has been for 30 years. Do either of you have any legal claim to this house? Her son is my husband, Crystal said. This is community property. No, ma'am. Property owned before marriage and kept in one person's name doesn't automatically become marital property. And even if your husband had a claim, which he doesn't, you can't issue eviction notices. That's not legal. This is ridiculous, Diane snapped. Shay's an old woman trying to hold on to a house she doesn't need while young people can't build their lives. That's her right, Officer Martinez said firmly. This is her property. And this, he held up the fake eviction notice, is a serious issue. Creating false legal documents is a crime. That's when Brandon's car pulled into the driveway. He got out, took one look at the police car, and his face went white. What's going on? Crystal rushed to him. Your mother called the police because we asked her to move out. She's being completely unreasonable. Brandon, I said, did you know about the eviction notice? What eviction notice? The one your wife just tried to serve me. 48 hours to leave. Did you know? He looked at Crystal. You said we were just encouraging her to move. You didn't say anything about eviction. I had to take action, Crystal said. You were being too soft. We need this house. Need it for what? And that's when Crystal made her mistake. She was angry, frustrated that her plan was falling apart, and she let the truth slip out. For the sale. Obviously. We can get $650,000 for this place. My mother already has a buyer lined up. We split the money, use it for something better. Did you really think I wanted to live in this outdated dump forever? Brandon stared at her. You want to sell my mother's house. It's not her house, Crystal shouted. It's yours, or it will be once she signs those papers. Then we can do whatever we want with it. But you told me we were going to live here. Raise our kids here, Crystal laughed. That same cold sound it heard through the heating vent. Oh my God, you're so naive. This was always about the money. The house, the marriage, all of it. My mother and I, we saw the opportunity, and we took it. The silence that followed was deafening. Officer Martinez shifted uncomfortably. Diane grabbed Crystal's arm, trying to quiet her, but Crystal shook her off. What do you mean, the marriage? Brandon's voice was barely a whisper. I mean, I was never going to stay with you long term. We sell the house, wait the appropriate amount of time, divorce, and I walk away with my share. That was always the plan. I watched my son's face crumble, watched him understand that his entire marriage was a lie, and despite everything, my heart broke for him. You need to leave, Officer Martinez said to Crystal and Diane. Both of you, gather your personal belongings and exit the property. This is insane, Diane said. Brandon, talk some sense into everyone. But Brandon wasn't looking at her. He was staring at Crystal like he'd never seen her before. Did you ever love me? Love. Crystal shook her head. You were a means to an end. A sweet, stupid means to a very profitable end. That's enough, Officer Martinez said. You have 1 hour to collect your belongings. If you're not gone by then, you'll be arrested for trespassing. Crystal turned to me, and the look in her eyes was pure venom. You think you've won? Well, Sue. We'll tie you up in court for years. You'll spend every penny you have on lawyers. No, you won't, Officer Martinez said, because if you continue to harass Mrs. Sullivan, you'll face charges for elder abuse, fraud, and forgery. That eviction notice you created is evidence of a crime. I'd strongly suggest you leave quietly. Diane pulled Crystal toward the house. Come on. Well, figure something else out. They disappeared inside to pack Crystal's things. Brandon sank down onto the porch steps, his head in his hands. I sat down next to him. Officer Martinez gave us some space, walking back to his patrol car to make some notes. I'm so sorry, Mom, Brandon said. I'm so sorry. I know, honey. She played me. She used me. And I almost let them push you out of your own home." He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. "What kind of son does that? The kind who wanted to make his wife happy. The kind who's been manipulated by someone very skilled at manipulation." I heard what she said about the money. About divorcing me after selling the house. God, I'm an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're trusting. That's different. How did you know? About the house still being yours. I never told them it wasn't. After meeting Diane that first time, something felt off. So I just stayed quiet about the ownership. Let them assume what they wanted to assume. You protected yourself from my wife. I protected both of us, sweetheart. If they'd gotten their hands on this house, you would have lost everything too. Officer Martinez came back over. "Mrs. Sullivan, I'm going to file a report about this incident. You might want to consider getting a restraining order against these women." "I will," I said. "Thank you, officer." Crystal and Diane emerged from the house 40 minutes later. Crystal's suitcases piled in Diane's car. Crystal didn't look at any of us. Diane gave me one last hard stare. "You'll regret this," she said. "I don't think I will," I replied. We watched them drive away. Then Brandon turned to me. "Mom, I need to fix this. I need to make this right." "Yes," I said. "You do. But not today. Today, we both need to process what just happened." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "Can I stay here tonight? I can't face going to a hotel. This is your home," I said. "It always has been." We sat on that porch until the sun started to set, not saying much, just being present with each other. My son's marriage had imploded. My trust had been shattered, but we were both still here, still standing, still together. And the house, my house, was safe. The next 2 weeks were some of the hardest of my life. Not because of Crystal and Diane, though they tried their best to make trouble, but because I had to watch my son put himself back together piece by piece. Brandon moved into the guest bedroom, the one he'd grown up in. He called in sick to work for 3 days, barely ate, barely spoke. I brought him soup and sat with him, not forcing conversation, just being there. That's what mothers do. On the 4th day, he finally emerged. "I need to see a lawyer," he said over breakfast. "About an annulment. Harold Bennett can recommend someone," I offered. "Family law specialist." He met with attorney Patricia Green the following Monday. She reviewed everything. The short marriage, the fraud, the manipulation, Crystal's own admission that Shed married him for financial gain. Patricia told Brandon he had strong grounds for annulment based on fraud and misrepresentation. "In this state," she explained, "if one party entered the marriage under false pretenses with intent to deceive, the marriage can be declared invalid. It's like it never existed." Brandon filed the paperwork that week. Crystal fought it at first, threatened to claim she was entitled to spousal support, to a share of Brandon's assets. But Brandon had no assets. The house wasn't his. His car was leased. His savings account held maybe $3,000. There was nothing for Crystal to claim. Patricia sent Crystal's attorney a comprehensive letter outlining the fraud, the fake eviction notice, and the recorded admissions of Crystal's true intentions. She also mentioned that criminal charges could still be filed if Crystal continued to harass the Sullivan family. Crystal signed the annulment papers within a week, but that didn't stop her and Diane from trying to cause trouble in other ways. They started calling our neighbors, telling them I was a mean old woman who'd broken up my son's marriage. They posted vague accusations on social media about elder abuse and family greed. They even tried to file a complaint with Adult Protective Services, claiming Brandon was holding me prisoner in my own home. The APS visit was brief. The social worker took one look at me, at my clean and well-maintained house, at the loving way Brandon and I interacted, and closed the case within 20 minutes. "Some people use our services as weapons," she told me apologetically. "I'm sorry you were subjected to this." Our neighbors rallied around us. Martha Henderson from next door brought over a casserole and told me Shed never trusted Crystal. Too interested in everyone's business. Martha said, always asking what houses were worth, who was planning to move. I thought she was just nosy. But it was more than that. Tom and Rachel Cooper from across the street stopped by to say they'd had a similar experience with Diane years ago. She tried to date Tom's father after his mother died, Rachel explained. Really pushed hard for him to sell his house and move into something smaller. When he refused, she lost interest immediately. We should have warned you. Even our pastor, Father Michael, called to check on us. I've been hearing rumors, he said. I want you to know the church community supports you both. What Crystal did was unconscionable. But the most important support came from Brandon himself. He started therapy, working through the manipulation and betrayal. His therapist helped him understand how Crystal had used common tactics, love bombing and isolation, to control him. She made me feel like I had to choose between her happiness and yours, he told me one evening, and she was so good at making her wants seem reasonable. Like, of course we needed more space. Of course you'd be happier somewhere smaller. She framed everything as concern for you. That's what manipulators do, I said. They make their cruelty look like kindness. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I got a call from Harold Bennett. Margie, I've been doing some research. I think you need to hear this. He came over that evening with a file folder. Inside were newspaper clippings and public record searches. Crystal Thompson pulled this exact scheme before, Harold said. 3 years ago in Ohio, she was engaged to a man named David Harrison, whose mother had recently become a widow. The mother owned a valuable property in Columbus. Crystal and Diane moved in, started the same process of pushing the mother toward a retirement community. What happened? The mother figured it out before any damage was done. She kicked Crystal out, and David broke off the engagement, but they didn't press charges. The mother just wanted them gone. I stared at the documents. So she's done this before. Multiple times, I suspect. These are just the ones I found. Diane has a history, too. She's worked at 4 different law firms in the past 10 years, always leaving under questionable circumstances. I found a complaint filed against her in Kentucky for unauthorized practice of law and document forgery. She forged the eviction notice. Almost certainly. And that's a crime we can prove. Brandon looked up from the papers. We should report her. Both of them. I agree, Harold said. With your permission, I'll contact the district attorney's office. This is elder fraud, conspiracy, forgery, and attempted theft by deception. These are serious charges. I thought about it. Part of me just wanted to move on. Put this behind us. But another part, the part that had been fighting for survival these past months, knew that Crystal and Diane would just find another victim if someone didn't stop them. Do it, I said. File the complaint. The district attorney took the case. It helped that Officer Martinez's report documented everything, and that we had recordings of Crystal's admissions. The fake eviction notice, which Diane had created on her law firm's letterhead, was traced back to her work computer. Diane was fired from her job immediately. The law firm didn't want the liability of an employee forging legal documents. She also faced professional sanctions from the State Bar Association and potential criminal charges. Crystal was charged with attempted elder fraud and conspiracy to commit theft. She took a plea deal, probation, community service, and restitution payments to me for the emotional distress and legal fees. The judge at her sentencing was particularly stern. You targeted a vulnerable widow and manipulated her son. You created false documents and attempted to steal property worth over $600,000. The only reason you're not going to prison is that you were stopped before completing the theft. Consider yourself fortunate. Crystal and Diane moved to Florida shortly after. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that they were looking for their next opportunity, their next vulnerable property owner. I hoped the criminal record would slow them down, but people like that always find a way. The important thing was that they were gone from our lives. Brandon continued therapy and slowly started rebuilding his confidence. He moved into a small apartment in March, ready to stand on his own 2 feet for the first time. I need to learn to take care of myself, he told me. To not be so dependent on others for validation. The therapist says I have codependent tendencies. I need to work on that. I'm proud of you, I said. It takes courage to look at yourself honestly. I almost cost you everything, Mom. Your home, your security, your peace. I'll spend the rest of my life making that up to you. You don't have to make anything up. You were a victim too. She chose you specifically because you're kind and trusting. Naive, you mean? No. Kind. There's a difference. Don't let what she did turn you cynical. He smiled, a real smile for the first time in weeks. I'll try not to. 6 months have passed since that terrible day on my front porch. 6 months of healing, rebuilding, and learning. I'm sitting in my sunlit living room right now, the one Crystal tried to redesign, but it's back to the way I like it. My comfortable old furniture, my family photos on the walls, my books and knitting basket by the window. Brandon comes over every Sunday for dinner. He brings flowers sometimes, or a bottle of wine, or just himself and his improving mood. We cook together in my outdated kitchen with its dark wood cabinets, the kitchen Crystal wanted to gut and renovate. I love this kitchen. Thomas installed these cabinets with his own hands. My son is dating again, taking it slow this time. Her name is Amy, and she's a school teacher with a warm laugh and genuine kindness. She doesn't ask about my house or my finances. She just enjoys Brandon's company and treats me with easy respect when we meet for coffee. I'm not rushing into anything. Brandon told me last week. I'm taking at least a year to just be myself, figure out who I am without trying to please someone else. I joined a support group for older adults dealing with financial exploitation by family members. Turns out, stories like mine are heartbreakingly common. Adult children, in-laws, even grandchildren targeting elderly relatives for their assets. We meet twice a month and share our experiences, offer advice, support each other. I've helped 3 other women in the group protect their properties from similar schemes. One woman's daughter-in-law was doing exactly what Crystal tried to do. With my experience and Harold's guidance, we helped her document the manipulation and take legal action. Her home is safe now. The house itself has become more than just a building to me. It represents survival, wisdom, the importance of trusting your instincts. When Diane made those comments at our first dinner, when Crystal's eyes calculated the property value, my gut told me something was wrong. I listened to that voice. I protected myself quietly, without drama, just by not revealing information I wasn't required to reveal. Some people might say I should have been more open, more trusting, that keeping the house ownership secret was deceptive. But I disagree. I wasn't deceiving anyone. I was protecting what was mine, what Thomas and I built together over 30 years of marriage and hard work. I had no obligation to announce my financial situation to people who just entered my life, and that secret, that small omission, saved me. If Crystal and Diane had known from the beginning that the house was solely in my name, they might have pushed Brandon to pressure me differently. They might have had me sign papers before I realized what was happening. The element of surprise, the fact that they didn't know what they were dealing with until it was too late, that's what protected me. I've learned so much through this experience. I've learned that love doesn't mean surrender, that protecting yourself isn't selfish, that boundaries aren't walls, they're foundations. I've learned that sometimes the people who talk most about your best interests are the ones looking out for their own. But I've also learned about resilience, about the power of community, about second chances. Brandon learned that real love doesn't require you to betray your values or abandon your family. He learned to spot manipulation, to trust his own judgment, to stand on his own. Our relationship is different now, deeper, more honest. We talk about difficult things. He asks my advice but makes his own decisions. I respect his autonomy, and he respects my wisdom. We're both better for having survived this together. The legal system worked, eventually. Crystal and Diane faced consequences. Not as severe as I might have liked, but enough to stop them temporarily and warn their next potential victims. The complaint I filed is now public record. Anyone who searches their names will find it. I still live in this house. In every room of it. I use Thomas' workshop now, learning woodworking. I've turned the master bedroom back into my own space. The guest rooms are ready for the grandchildren I hope to have someday, when Brandon finds the right partner and builds a real family. Sometimes I walk through these rooms and remember that terrible day when Crystal told me to pack my bags. I remember the cold certainty that I was about to lose everything. And then I remember the moment I pulled out that deed. made that phone call, and took my power back. I was not a victim. I was a woman who prepared, who protected, who fought back when necessary. I saved myself, with help from good people like Harold and Officer Martinez and my supportive neighbors. But the foundation was me, standing firm, refusing to be moved from the life it built. This house is mine. My name is on the deed. My memories fill these rooms. My future unfolds here, on my terms, in my time. And no one, not a manipulative daughter-in-law, not a scheming con artist, not anyone, can take that away from me. The secret I kept wasn't about hiding, it was about protecting. And I'm glad I did. To anyone listening to this story, I want you to hear this. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate before you act. Protect your assets, your home, your security. You don't owe anyone access to your financial information just because they're family or because they ask. Real love respects boundaries. Real family doesn't require you to sacrifice your security for their comfort. And if you're going through something similar, know this: you're not alone. There are resources, attorneys who specialize in elder law, support groups, police officers trained in financial crimes against seniors. Speak up. Fight back. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're the problem for protecting what's yours. I'm 65 years old, and I've never felt stronger or more certain of myself. This experience, as painful as it was, taught me that I'm capable of protecting myself, of seeing through deception, of standing firm when everyone around me is pushing me to give in. That's the life lesson I want to leave you with. You are stronger than you think. Your home is your sanctuary. Your boundaries are your protection. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for yourself and the people you love is to hold firm to what you know is right, even when it's difficult. Now I have a question for you. Have you ever had to keep a secret to protect yourself? Have you ever felt pressured by family to give up something important to you? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's facing a similar situation. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own boundaries and protections, please give it a like. Subscribe to hear more stories about real people facing real challenges and finding their way through. Share this with anyone who might need to hear it, especially older adults or anyone dealing with difficult family dynamics. Your share could help someone recognize manipulation before it's too late. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community. I hope you take away not just entertainment but real insight, real wisdom that you can apply to your own life. Protect yourself, trust yourself. You deserve security and peace in your own home. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Remember, your home is your sanctuary, and you have every right to keep it that way.